In this episode of Hot Hardware's 2.5 Geeks, we're going to go ripping some threads with a very special guest from AMD. Next. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters. Dave Altavilla here for Hot Hardware's 2.5 Geeks live stream. Happy Friday, everybody. With me, as always, my compatriot and partner in crime, Marco Chiappetta. How you doing, buddy?
I am doing okay. Can't complain. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good myself. Trying to get let's see. We got somebody else here too with us though, and that's a beautiful thing. Yes, happy Friday to you as well, David McAfee from AMD. Welcome to the live stream, bud. Good to see you again.
Thanks, guys. Happy Friday. Good to see you both again.
Absolutely. It's 1 p.m. now on Fridays that we've been queuing up the live stream, and it's not quite beer 30 yet, so we're gonna be all squared away in business like for now with Dave. But and Dave's he's an executive from AMD, so we need to be sharp and at the ready. Good to have you with us, Dave. And we have an interesting cast on tap today, live stream on tap today. I think folks will be very interested in the many cores that are Threadripper. But let's talk about you first a little bit, so folks that aren't familiar with you, just a little bit of your background. So you are corporate VP and general manager, client channel business at AMD. If I have your current title right, is that fair?
That's true. Yeah, I run our Ryzen CPU channel business for all of our DIYers, enthusiasts, and system builders. We create the products, plan the products, and make sure that those get to market in the hands of all of our partners. And maybe just a little bit about me. I'm a longtime veteran of AMD. I joined in 2006. And the experience with AMD and the Ryzen products over the past couple of years has absolutely been the experience of a lifetime, with so many amazing products and so many amazing accomplishments that we've achieved over that time. It's really been a fantastic place to be a part of.
Very cool, very cool. And you're based in the sunny state of Austin,
in the
sunny
state
of Texas.
In Austin, Texas. Actually, out the window here at the office, a beautiful bird's eye view of downtown Austin. So enjoying the sunny weather today.
There you go. You're a cowboy. Excellent. Well, thanks for joining us. Marco's got all kinds of questions on tap. I know Marco's also going to do his usual, bouncer / vetting in the comments section. Folks, if you do have questions, please fire away in the comments. We will try to feature them on screen and get them answered for you. We do have a couple that we've already fielded from the site at hothardware.com. But Marco, why don't you go ahead and set the ground rules for folks?
Yeah, so obviously we're not going to get David in trouble, and he's not going to answer any questions about future product or stuff that hasn't already been disclosed. So as much as we would love to have breaking news like that, don't expect any answers for questions asking about unreleased stuff that hasn't already been talked about. And don't be a troll, right? David's here to engage with the community directly. We really appreciate him being here. This is your opportunity to get information directly from AMD. So, use it as such. Don't be the typical cynical PC guy.
Cynical? No.
There's nobody cynical in the tech space at all, ever.
At all. Never. Especially in the comment section.
No, never have. The comment section on YouTube is always the nicest place in the universe.
Just a friendly bunch of folks. Absolutely. No, that's good stuff. For sure, folks. We want to kind of push Dave as much as we can, right up to his comfort zone on a couple of things if we can help it, and extract as much juicy tidbit and detail as we can. But we want him also to keep his job because he's real good at it. So there.
Well, let's do it. I'm excited. This will be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Threadripper, as we call it up here in the North. That's like AH on the end. No ER. Is a do we bite, Bob? Well, we have to feature this one. It looks like that might bite. It looks like a friendly dog, but I don't know. Bob,
I read that as Rob Batcave, but that's because
Rob Batcave. Yeah. It's going to make it whatever we want. Yeah. So lots of good stuff going on these days in the high-end desktop space, thanks to the folks at AMD. Many cores, up to 96, in fact. In case folks weren't paying attention, that's a whole lot of cores in a desktop system. In the family known as Threadripper 7000 and Threadripper Pro 7000, Marco has kicked the tires and lit the fires, as they say, on the Pro 7000 WX series, the 96 core chip already. There is a high-end desktop variant coming with maybe a few less cores. And we know what that lineup looks like. We don't know what that performance characteristic looks like yet, but soon coming. Marco may or may not be in possession of said high-end desktop platform, right, buddy? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I have no idea what I'm touching to my right.
There you go. Exactly. So lots to digest here. This is a many core, super high-end platform that is just loaded for bear. If you have serious workloads to crunch through, think things like content creation and high-end compute, perhaps even machine learning and things like that on the desktop. Video, image rendering, 3D rendering, design, serious stuff, in addition to, traditional PC things that an enthusiast craves. That's what this platform is all about. And that's what Dave is here to talk about. So why don't we start at the top, Marco? You wanna field a couple of your own? I've got a couple. Looks like something's already coming in the chat. I can see already. And
yeah, let's provide some quick, simple clarity first, and we'll start with something real easy. So we have the Threadripper Pro 7000 series and standard Threadrippers arriving essentially at the same time. Dave, can you just quickly explain to everybody how the two platforms differ and what sort of target markets you're going after with the two platforms?
Sure. I think that's a great place to start. And maybe we'll begin by rewinding the clock back to 3000 series Threadripper. That was really the last time that AMD had both high-end desktop as well as the Pro workstation platforms in market at the same time. And I think, at that point in time, what we really saw was there was an enthusiast audience who really craved what the high-end desktop Threadripper platform offered. And then there was a customer that needed more expandability, more memory or larger memory footprint, more of the security and manageability, and the professional grade features that go along with that Pro platform. So the separation in our mind and in our product portfolio is really around that Pro workstation platform is intended for somebody who needs the absolute maximum of expandability, of memory capability, core count, along with all those security, reliability, manageability features, all the ilities that are a part of that platform. That's what that Pro platform was really built for. And that high-end desktop platform was built for somebody that was a little bit more of an enthusiast or a prosumer or somebody who's using their PC for productivity, for the types of tasks that require a lot of processing power and capability, but maybe don't need to step all the way up to that very high-end, most expandable platform that's out there. And I think when we were in the 3000 series, we saw those as two very different, very viable spaces in the market, and both were growing and very healthy for us. In the 5000 series, I think as we all know, we as an industry had a lot of challenges around just supply and being able to satisfy demand for our products, and focus more on the Pro side of the business, because those are some of the most demanding customers that we have that use these high core count processors. But now that we're past that state in the industry, with the 7000 series, we wanted to bring back both that high-end desktop segment along with the Pro segment. So in our portfolio, there is feature separation between those two platforms. For instance, the Pro platform, in addition to having all of those security and manageability and reliability features that go along with Pro, It also features 8 channels of memory, and it features 128 lanes of PCI connectivity attached directly to the socket. In the high-end desktop space, that's a 4 memory channel platform and fewer PCI lanes, still enough to drive multiple NVMe drives and multiple GPUs attached to the system, but fewer lanes of PCI and a little bit less expandability. And one of the primary reasons that we really wanted to create that separation and create those 2 different platforms is in the 5000 series, when we only had Pro, we saw something missing from our portfolio. What you really had was these workstation motherboards that were all EATX, very large boards that required a large chassis to accommodate the size of the board, the PSU, all of the peripherals that really were intended to be a part of that platform. And this return to the high-end desktop space allowed us to create a definition around the product and a definition around the motherboard that now enables ATX-sized boards that fit into a much more compact chassis. And so if you're a enthusiast or a developer or a content creator who really is targeting, 4 sticks of memory, single GPU, a couple of NVMe drives, it allows you to build a much more compact, much more cost-effective system for your needs in that space. And so we felt that there was still a really valid reason to go after both parts of that market and do so with products that were targeted in slightly different ways. What I will say, and you kind of see it here on the web page, is that those workstation platforms, the WRX90 platform, is only compatible with the Threadripper Pro processors. And that's what lights up all of those security and manageability and other features that target it towards a very highly reliable 24/7 productivity type of environment. The TRX50 platform, which is our high-end desktop platform, will actually accommodate both the high-end desktop processors, the X series processors, as well as the WX or Pro processors. And so that gives you scalability from 24 cores all the way up to 96 cores in that TRX50 platform, should you want to go there.
Got it. Perfect. That actually, you covered a question that I was going to ask later.
Super.
So that's perfect. Now, we have some questions that are relevant that will pop in, but I think something that a lot of people are curious about, and we've talked about this in the past, David, but with the previous gen, and I'm not talking 3000 series, but 5000 series, AMD had stated that you were going to focus solely on Pro. Mm-hmm. But now with 7000, we do have Pro and standard Threadripper again. What is it about today that makes AMD's decision to have both different than just a couple of years ago?
Yeah. It's a very good question, a very fair question as well, because we were very deliberate in the 5000 series in focusing on that Pro market. But as that product lived, I think what we really saw more than anything else as we talked to our system builder partners and as we heard feedback from the community was the frustration around, this drives a really large motherboard and it drives a really large chassis that's a part of it. And what many customers who use that platform, even in the professional space or as freelancers or developers wanted, was something that was small enough that could fit easily under the desk, didn't take up so much space, and kind of targeted that configuration that I talked about. 4 memory channels, single GPU, a handful of NVMe drives. That's kind of the sweet spot that we were targeting with this high-end desktop platform. And I think as we looked at the decisions that were made in the 5000 series versus today, we saw that we had created a hole there. And bringing back this high-end desktop platform was really our attempt to go, resolve that space in the market where we saw a need, we saw demand from customers, and wanted to bring that platform back to go after that specific customer set.
Awesome. Before we jump to the next question, I just have to say that Hot Hardware exists because we were huge enthusiasts and we love these super high-end platforms. So thank you, AMD, for coming back into this space.
Yeah, good stuff. Absolutely. And that actually prompts a question I had. Obviously, you folks found the broad market appeal or broad enough market appeal. I mean, clearly this is it's a little bit of a niche where it's high end, super high end configurations. But what is the the demographic beyond the obvious all-out performance enthusiast that just wants as many cores as they can get their hands on because they're building, the most monster rig they can. What's the largest user demographic for AMD with respect to Threadripper platforms, whether it be historically or even today with the new platform offering that you're seeing?
Yeah, I would say historically, going back a couple of generations, our sweet spot has really been in, I'll call it visual effects and media and entertainment type workloads. The high core count of a Threadripper processor, whether you're a 3D modeler or an animator or render or doing rendering jobs with your system, Threadripper has enough capability as a desk side workstation to allow for faster iteration and to allow those creators and artists work faster and do more turns of their design so that it's perfect before it's sent off to a render farm for the final render job as a part of that workflow. And that, I think, for the past couple of generations, if you look at the success that AMD has had in Hollywood and with large visual effects studios, with both our Threadripper products as well as our Epic server products, we've been very successful with the amount of core count and capability that we bring to those creative professionals who need, just massive multi-thread throughput as a part of those platforms. I think where that shifted over the past couple of years, and honestly, looking at where we go with the 7000 series, there's a couple of big differences. That with the move from Zen 3 to Zen 4, there's a tremendous amount of single thread performance uplift in terms of IPC or instructions per clock. Just the efficiency of that engine is superior in the Zen 4 generation. On top of that, our clock speeds have increased significantly gen on gen. So you get much more responsive single thread performance as a part of these platforms as well. And so now I think expanding the footprint from media and entertainment into things like CAD/CAM, manufacturing and design, software development, workflows where there's maybe a little bit more balance between single thread performance and multi-thread performance needs as a part of the overall workflow of a designer or an engineer or a developer. This 7000 series Threadripper platform kind of removes all barriers from this processor playing in all of those spaces. And I would say the emerging piece of it as well is this AI and ML development space. Whether you are building models, training models, doing that on CPU or GPU, doing local inference, it's an incredibly capable platform for that as well. And I think that's the next dimension of how Threadripper accelerates into the future, is tapping into this new market of software developers that are building our next gen AI models that will shape our lives for years to come.
There you go. You're going to be fueling the Skynet apocalypse, Dave. Thanks a lot. I'm kidding. kidding. No, that's good stuff for sure. And actually, you touched on something that was interesting to me. You mentioned the IPC lift and the clock speed lift. Just for folks that are tuning in, we're hitting north of 5 gigahertz now on a boost clock, and the IPC lift somewhere around 13% between.
Yeah, I think it's
previous
13%, depending on the workload that you're running, but across an average of a blend of many workloads, it's around 13%. So it's a very substantial generational jump in terms of single thread performance on these systems, and you really see that show up when you look at tasks that have a heavy single thread component to a portion of an overall design workflow.
Very cool. Excellent.
Yeah, like
excellent.
If I know this is a bit of an eye chart. If you come to hothardware.com, we have basically a full architectural overview and performance numbers from the 7995WX. But if you can read this, out there in streaming land, the 7995WX with 96 cores, right, will boost to 5.1 gigahertz, whereas the previous gen 64 core boosted to 4.5. So 600 megahertz at the ultra high end. But if you go to more mainstream, like a 32 core model, the 7975 boosts to 5.3 gigahertz with these many cores. That's no joke.
Yeah.
We have really focused on driving frequency. And I think even if you look at our more traditional Ryzen processor line, that jump from 5000 series to 7000 series in terms of the amount of CPU frequency that we drive in those products has really been one of the most significant aspects of really uplifting performance gen on gen.
Very cool.
Awesome.
I did have a question on the product in terms of packaging, and we've got some good questions stacking up in the chat, and we'll get to those shortly, folks. Real good stuff. Threadripper Pro and or Threadripper 7000 in general, they're basically massive multi-chip modules, right? I mean, you look at that thing, it is. I mean, there's one in Marco's hulking geek mitt. He's holding that thing. And look at how big that is. That is a big slab of silicon, multi-chip silicon. What sort of packaging challenges come with the territory for producing a processor of that size and scale that plugs into a single socket? I mean, it seems pretty complex.
It is certainly very complex. And, AMD's package engineering team has spent years developing and refining our multi-chip module approach to the way that we build processors. What I will say is there's a lot of commonality between what we do on the Threadripper side as well as what happens on the EPYC server side. So you see a lot of similarities there in the way that we do R&D around next generation package technologies. I would say one of the most challenging aspects of the 7000 series Threadripper package and socket and motherboard design comes in two dimensions. One is power, right? When you bring a processor with up to 96 cores into that socket, delivering enough power to still drive meaningful uplift where you can drive high base frequencies on the product or high all core frequencies on the product when all of those 96 cores are under full load. Being able to move that much power through the socket into the processor and then dissipate that heat, of course, is a very significant challenge. And then the other one is, this 7000 series socket moves to DDR5 memory. It moves to PCI Gen 5 interconnect technology, those high-speed I/O signals, and ensuring the end-to-end signal integrity across a motherboard where you're driving multiple very high-speed interfaces to GPUs and NVMe drives and 8 memory channels is maybe the second significant challenge in that. So our packaging teams have been working on these designs for many years to ensure that we're driving the signal integrity and the power delivery to the socket to really get the most out of this product. Because whether it goes into an EPYC processor in the data center or a Threadripper or Threadripper Pro socket for a workstation user or a prosumer, we want to make sure that user gets the most out of their system. And putting those two aspects together of very high-speed signaling and power delivery has really been the focus of this package design and this next generation of Threadripper processors.
Yeah, I was going to say the signal integrity folks probably had a few sleepless nights along the way on that journey.
Many sleepless nights.
That's actually a good spot for a super quick injection and some information here. Just to show you what David's talking about, look at the top of this chart, right? That's the Threadripper Pro 7995WX versus the previous gen flagship and the two fastest desktop, standard desktop processors you can buy. When you see the two top consumer processors with these little tiny bars and that monster bar at the top for the new Threadrippers, that's the engineering work, paying dividends right there. These are some massive performance uplifts, and that just means getting these complex workloads done faster. I thought it was the perfect time to show that chart.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I think when we talk to not just system builders, but end users that are professionals using these systems, that's honestly what they tell us is, in fact, I think when we were meeting with some of the studios who use these in digital effects creations, many of their artists complained. Their biggest complaint to the IT department was, "You've ruined my day. Like, I used to have enough time where I could go get a cup of coffee, take some time off, do some emails while I'm waiting for this job to complete. And now I barely have time to go get a cup of coffee before it's done." But, in the end, all joking aside, what that means is just more iterations for a better final product. And I think that's the biggest benefit that Threadripper brings to that class of user.
And our fun fact there, our friend Matt from AMD, Matt Hurwitz, is hanging out in the gallery behind the scenes here. You folks can't see or hear him, but it's sort of hearkening back to my question about the Skynet apocalypse. Fun fact: Threadripper powered Terminator Dark Fate. So there you go. I wasn't lying.
Coincidence?
That's good stuff. Real good stuff.
Yeah, we should probably pop
Yes.
some questions from the gallery. Are you going to pop them on screen, Dave?
I can pop them on screen.
Yeah, go ahead.
The ones you want, and I'll do the popping. How's that?
You know what? I'll do it. So let's.
Okay.
I'm going to pop this one on from YouTube from False Vacuum. He's asking, I have a question about WRX90 boards and new TR5 socket AIO availability. You know, why a few days before launch, not much product shown. So he's basically asking about cooler compatibility with the new socket. Can you provide any color
Liquid
there, David?
cooler, yeah.
Yep, we have been, like I mentioned, that heat removal as part of one of the big challenges as a part of this next generation Threadripper platform. Many of the existing coolers that are compatible with 5000 series Threadripper work just fine with 7000 series Threadripper, but we will be launching a cooler compatibility page going live on launch day with all of the coolers that we've tested to be fully compatible with the 7000 series processors.
Got it. Perfect. Okay. And one other one here. Now this one, it's a little sticky, but I think we have to get an answer for everybody. Yeah. So some folks, you know, we're a little concerned about the TRX 40 platform and that only one generation kind of in that socket. Is there anything you can talk about in terms of the potential longevity of the new platform?
Yeah, no, I think that we have not made we've not made public statements around longevity of this socket. Although what I will say is, I think as you've seen the steps that we've taken on the AM4 and even statements we've made around our AM5 platform, we certainly recognize that for the user base that's buying these systems, having socket longevity is very, very important. And anytime we transition out of a socket, we take those decisions very seriously and weigh, you know, the benefits versus the trade-offs of staying in that existing socket. What I will say is we have every intention to keep this socket alive for multiple generations, both for Workstation as well as for our high-end desktop platforms. We're evaluating how long of a commitment we can make on socket longevity on this particular platform, but we certainly understand the feedback from the users and have the desire to provide multiple generations of longevity on this platform as well.
Awesome. Perfect answer. Now, just a quick tangent. The other thing to consider with these platforms is you kind of have a much longer useful lifespan, just to give it, because you have so much performance on tap here.
Yep.
You know, I have access to basically any PC hardware available. I'm still running a Threadripper 2990WX. So, you know, 3 generations back, this system has been absolutely perfect for years. And I really don't feel like performance is slow at all. Obviously, it's a massive upgrade with the newer platforms, but, you know, I know not getting multiple generations out of a socket is a sore issue for some folks, but it's not like this is a machine you're going to replace next year, is all I'm trying to say.
Well, I guess what I would add to that, Marco, is I think that maybe there's a different view on that for somebody who's buying a WRX or a WRX80/WRX90 platform versus somebody who's investing in a high-end desktop platform. I think it's very, very true what you said a moment ago. Somebody who's buying a Threadripper Pro system, whether it's through their business or as a freelancer or an independent developer and content creator, you're right. That's a system. That's a big investment upfront, but that's an investment that's likely going to pay off for many years to come. And those transitions happen a little bit more slowly as those systems have a very significant longevity to them for years and years to come. I think it's more possible and arguably, as the question pointed out a moment ago, a little bit more challenging for somebody who's in that enthusiast segment. I also agree with you. It's not everybody who is refreshing their processor with every generation, but I think the demand for that, or the demand for that from the community and the enthusiast space is absolutely the right thing to ask AMD for. And I think we're going to do everything we can to make that a reality.
Gotcha.
Cool,
Makes
cool.
perfect sense. Thank you.
All right.
So let me see what else we have here in the chat.
I will point out, Marco, one fun fact that we talked about when we were first kind of building this product is we went back and looked all the way back to the first gen Threadripper processors to where we are today. And in terms of multi-thread performance from 1000 series Threadripper to 7000 series Threadripper, it's an 11x increase in multi-thread performance that we've been able to drive into this platform over the last several years, which honestly, for somebody who is using this system for productivity, like that is just such a massive performance gain and such a massive efficiency gain for somebody who's using this to get really complex work done.
Yeah, and to build on that, something that I probably should have done a separate post on this, but your current Dragon Range notebooks are faster than the top end first gen Threadripper, right? It's kind of wild. It's true. Wild. Like the top end Threadripper was a 16 core part, you know, then it was, I think it was the 1950X, and now you have newer, faster, and more cores in the notebooks. Pretty crazy.
Wow. Wild.
So let's just get some clarity on the memory question too. So I'm going to just add another layer to this. First, if you can just explain why with this generation RDIMMs, DDR5 RDIMMs were kind of chosen as the exclusive memory offering. And then we have a question from a viewer asking about compatibility. Do the memory kits, will XMP enabled kits work, or do they have to have Expo support?
That was my question too.
Good question. So maybe I'll take the first part of this first and say, you know, we looked very, very carefully at RDIMM versus UDIMM for these platforms. I think one of the challenges, certainly just so everybody's aware, is in the DDR4 generation, the socket, the pinout between DDR4 UDIMMs and RDIMMs was identical, right? So you could really choose one or the other in the same motherboard. When the industry moved to DDR5, UDIMM and RDIMM socket and pinout are different from each other. And so it really requires a fundamental choice at the socket level, at the motherboard level, at the total system level to pick one option or the other, because there's no longer that interchangeability that we had in DDR4 memories for prior generations. So given that background, we looked extensively at UDIMM versus RDIMM. We looked at performance characteristics. We looked at the careabouts that we heard from our customers that are using Threadripper today. And I think there were a couple of things that were really resounding. You know, number one is we looked at our 5000 series Threadripper processors that are selling today, both to enthusiast customers, or I guess what I would call the professional freelancer type of customer, as well as a more commercial, you know, IT established organization. And features like ECC rose to the top of things that these customers demanded in their systems. They also care a great deal about overall memory footprint that's available on a particular platform. And then, you know, stability of the platform becomes very important as people are using this for really, you know, high performance productivity tasks. And when you weigh all of those things, you know, certainly RDIMM with ECC, check that box, a very straightforward connection there. The reliability of RDIMMs over UDIMMs, as well as the consistency and performance of RDIMM over UDIMM, is a very important factor that moved us in the RDIMM dimension, or in the RDIMM direction. And then the last aspect of it was really overall memory footprint, with RDIMMs being able to bring just so much more capacity into these systems for very large data sets, very large working data sets that need to be close to the processor. As you stacked all of that up, it really made RDIMM the right choice for this platform. And so that's why we drove our platform in that way, our socket that way, and the motherboards in that direction as well. I guess what I would add to that, the second part of the question about XMP versus Expo, I think that, you know, this is one where there is, I perceive confusion, not just in the Threadripper space, but even to an extent in the AM5 more mainstream desktop socket space. I'll be totally clear here. AMD motherboards and AMD processors work just fine with either XMP or Expo memories. You get very, very similar performance out of either of those kits. And so they are truly completely interchangeable. It's easy for a user to pick an XMP kit, drop it into an AMD motherboard, turn on those XMP overclocking profiles, and get great performance out of that system.
Yeah,
Very
I
cool.
think what most people don't understand is the XMP and Expo support. It's plugged into the firmware on the DIMM
That's
that
right.
the motherboards read. So as long as the DIMM itself is going to work, it's the motherboard reading those settings and plugging the optimal timings in. It's not necessarily a compatibility thing. And then
That's
just
exactly right. And
to
I
add
guess
some
what I would
color.
add to that,
Sorry.
Marco, is
Mhm.
if you look at what's loaded into that that memory space on the DIMMs for XMP versus Expo, there is a lot of overlap for the sort of core timings of the DIMM, and then Expo just layers on some incremental sub timing optimization that just brings a little bit more performance to those memory solutions.
Yeah. And
actually,
oh,
speaking,
sorry, Dave, go ahead.
well, I had another question relative to performance and I guess the differential between the 8-channel platform or the Pro and the 4-channel platform. You're talking theoretically in the high-end desktop, the HEDT part. You're talking theoretically half the memory bandwidth. Is it that much of an impact, or are we talking, I guess what's the really look like?
Yeah,
to read
I
that?
think it's a hard question to answer simply, Dave, because what you find is in the workstation space, these are not deployed as general purpose tools. They're deployed for very specific workloads, very specific working sets of data, those types of things. And there are absolutely some situations, complex data analysis, modeling type things where more memory bandwidth is beneficial to the application performance. But there's also many other workloads where I'll just use an example of, say, Blender or something like that, where I believe you won't see a significant amount of performance differential because that's not a workload that's really bound by memory bandwidth. It's bound more by your multi-thread CPU throughput. And so I guess maybe the best answer, which isn't a great one, is that your mileage will vary greatly, and it depends to a very large extent on the specific workload that you're running on that platform. Absolutely, there's applications that will benefit from it, but it won't be every application where you see a material benefit from 8 channels versus 4 channels.
Sure. Yeah, makes sense.
Just to give some specifics, I just want to point out, so these bandwidth scores are not the optimal numbers for the 7995WX. The OEM that we worked with to run these tests are initially shipping with DDR5 4800 speeds, but the platform supports faster. But compared to the 5995WX, it's not quite double, right? There's always some overhead, but you see a massive bandwidth increase. So 168 gigabytes a second on a 5995 with DDR4 on the previous gen platform, and you're up over 250 gigs a second on the newer platform, depending on the configuration. So there's a massive amount of memory bandwidth here. It's wild. Yeah. And again, if you look at the charts, the two fastest consumer desktop processors without overclocking, it's between 60 and 77 gigs.
Yeah, like a third.
It's just it's a night and day difference. They're different animals altogether.
The other thing I'll add, Marco, is especially when it comes to memory, but in many aspects of the system, it is a highly configurable platform. And the fact that it's a multi-memory controller, multi-chiplet architecture that's a part of it, users have the ability to go into their BIOS and specify the number of NUMA or non-uniform memory access domains that are a part of the platform. And so there's settings where you can define NUMA domains such that you get more memory bandwidth. You can define NUMA domains such that you get lower memory latency. And that, again, really kind of boils down to what workload are you running and which of those settings around NUMA domains and memory characteristics are most beneficial to the types of work that's being done on that particular system.
And that's what's at the top of the chart too, I should point out here. We didn't test all 4 modes, but this is one NUMA node versus 2.
Yep.
And you can see there is a slight bandwidth difference depending on the test being done. But yeah, there's flexibility with the platform there for everybody listening.
And I'll drop something into the chat here. Just going to drop a link. Folks can hit this. You'll find this interesting. Threadripper Pro 7995WX obliterates benchmarking records on air. So with standard air cooling now, with all these cores at play in Cinebench, of course, which is a heavily multi-threaded rendering application based on Cinema 4D, which is a professional 3D rendering package from Maxon. It is absolutely crushing everything in its path.
Yes, I think over the past couple of days, we've released some of the world records that we've broken on air and now with liquid coolers as well. And it's absolutely amazing the amount of performance that this system is capable of delivering for some of these highly multi-threaded workloads like Cinebench.
And because this is a bit of an eye chart, if you guys haven't seen this, that's a score of 161,259. Right? If you have a standard desktop, go download Cinebench and run it, and then compare to that number. It's insane. It's nuts.
It's quite a bit less. Quite a bit less.
Watching some of this stuff live and seeing Cinebench complete in a couple seconds, it's crazy. It's really nuts. Now, just I have to give a shout out to James Pryor. The cooler that was used, the air cooler, was the Ice Giant. It's not a regular air cooler. That thing is awesome. It's a massive, high performance dual fan, really big air cooler. Really, really cool part.
Love that. Good stuff.
You know what? That's actually that's an interesting question, right? Or just an interesting thing to talk about. Even with the huge complexity of these chips and all the challenges that goes along with building them, you're still enabling. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe I shouldn't say this just yet. I'm going to save that question because I didn't. I don't want to say something I'm not supposed to. I'm going to take that back. Let me
don't get Dave in trouble.
I'm going to try to get me in trouble. Okay, that's good.
I'm not going to get in trouble, but let's just change where I'm going. They're still unlocked like desktop parts, right?
Yes.
You're still allowing tweaking there.
Yes.
What are the challenges, or why do that with such an infinitely more complex platform?
Oh boy. Well, I'll start with this, right? I think that what we have seen from many of our enthusiasts is that it does provide a material uplift in performance, and that's both memory overclocking as well as CPU overclocking. I will say over the past couple of months, as we lead up to the launch of a processor, we spend a lot of time working with our ODM motherboard partners. We sent a team of people to Taiwan to meet with each of the motherboard manufacturers working on these platforms and spent days with each of them doing overclocking workshops. And the amount of excitement that we saw from all of our board partners in the results that they were able to achieve, the stability that they were able to achieve. I think both our enthusiast, the AMD enthusiast overclocking team, as well as our partners teams, just had an absolute ball with pushing the limits of these platforms and really, driving more capability and more performance out of these systems. And so, I think on one hand, yes, it absolutely pushes the limits of what's possible in application performance, and in many cases drives even more performance for critical portions of applications. But in our channel or DIY system builder systems in particular, not our OEM systems, the ability to overclock is, I think, one of the things that has always been a part of what Ryzen promises, and we wanted to bring that to the Threadripper space as well.
Very cool. Awesome.
There you go.
I'm just looking through the chat, Dave, if you want to riff while I'm flipping through here.
I'm actually seeing there's one here that's it's well, we might as well put it up and just answer it. I think we know the answer to the question without pestering Dave, but do they have specific AI accelerators on board currently? No. That is something that you're seeing at the laptop category right now with Ryzen AI for AMD. But in this case, you've got enough cores and enough PCI Express expansion connectivity that you can power as many accelerators as you probably need to for that application specifically. That's a fair assessment, right?
Yeah, I think what maybe let's talk a little bit about I know this isn't a notebook segment, but we'll talk about Ryzen AI for a second and how it relates to this question. I think our rationale behind selecting Ryzen AI, putting it into our notebook processors, is because that's a space where you're in a very power constrained environment, and having a highly efficient, highly tuned engine for the types of operations that are required for AI inference is, that need for power efficiency in a laptop platform is so critical that having a specialized engine to do that is very important. Now, those engines only scale to a certain size, and you're absolutely right. In a system like Threadripper, maybe there's a couple of things here. Number one, within our CPU architecture for the Zen 4 generation of core architecture, there are a number of AI instructions like bfloat 16 that have been added to the instruction set architecture that provide more efficiency in those AI workloads. But at the end of the day, with the core count that you have in the processor itself, with the amount of PCI bandwidth that you have to attach one or more, high performance, highly efficient graphics cards to do GPU compute for AI processing, you can get so much more capability from an AI processing standpoint through this platform without really having to put a dedicated AI accelerator into the chip. Because you are power constrained or power unconstrained in this desktop system, it opens the door to have a very wide range of performance capabilities through CPU and GPU on their own. The other thing that I would also say is that I think that we talk about AI like it's one monolithic thing, but the reality is AI is multifaceted, right? You have inference, you have model development, you have training, you have fine tuning, and each of those things requires a little bit different characteristics in terms of the hardware that's used to do it. Ryzen AI is built for and specialized for local inference processing. But if you're a model developer, Ryzen AI isn't necessarily going to help in the development of that model. And I think that's where, especially as you think about the space that a Ryzen Threadripper sits into, where it's targeted towards those engineers and data scientists and developers, having different aspects of the platform that are capable of really facing any challenge, whether it's x86 core CPU performance or massive AI GPU performance or whatever the case may be, even AI accelerator cards. Threadripper kind of has that flexibility and that expandability to be a great tool for any aspect of what a developer might need to do with AI.
So bring your AMD Instinct and your Alveo accelerator cards and plug them in.
Plug them in.
So we have another good question in the chat, but I failed to mention in the very beginning, if you're on LinkedIn, Twitter, or Facebook, we don't see your comments or questions live in our StreamYard interface. So pop on over to either Twitch or YouTube if you have questions, and I don't want you to think we're ignoring anybody. Pop over to the other platforms and throw questions in the chat if you have anything. But we do have another one that's sort of in line with something I was going to ask. I'm going to just phrase it a little bit differently. It's an availability question. You guys have disclosed on-shelf availability for November 21st. Can you just explain sort of what that means and what people will be able to get their hands on next week?
Yeah, the November 21st date will primarily focus on the high-end desktop boards. The workstation boards will trail a little bit later. Some will be in market earlier, some will be in market a little bit later. But those are certainly much more sophisticated and complex boards from our board manufacturing partners. Those largely will show up a little bit later in time, and availability around that November 21st date will be a bit more difficult to find. The one thing I will point out, though, is both series of processors, both the HEDT X series processors and the Pro WX series processors, will all be available on November 21st. And so any of those processors, either X or WX, will plug into a high-end desktop board.
Got it. You know what? Actually,
Cool.
you provided some detail on this early, but maybe we should just give a little more clarity. The Threadripper Pro and Threadripper 7000 work on the HEDT boards, but the standard Threadrippers won't go backwards to the other boards. Can you just explain exactly why that is and why people should focus on one or the other?
Sure. I guess let's talk forward backward compatibility for a second. I think the biggest reason there is there were so many technologies that changed in the socket interface from 5000 series to 7000 series, like moving from DDR4 memory to DDR5 memory, PCI Gen 4 to PCI Gen 5. That really makes those two platforms incompatible. So you can't take a 5000 series Threadripper Pro processor and put it in these new generations of motherboards. And conversely, you can't take a 7000 series processor and fit it into a 5000 series board. So the two are sort of mutually exclusive. Now, I guess I lost my train of thought there, Marco. Was there a second part to that?
It was more about on with current just the 7000 series. You can put a 7000 series
Yes.
Pro
Okay.
Into a HEDT board, but not the other way around.
Yes.
So if you can just give some clarity there.
I would say that really revolves primarily around the way that those Pro boards are designed and the feature that those Pro boards are designed with. So anything, maybe to start with, any Pro processor has an equivalent core count and an equivalent product definition in the non-Pro 7000 series Threadripper set of processors that we're making available. So there's no advantage from a core count or specification standpoint that would make a user lean one way or the other from Pro versus non-Pro. I think the bigger factor is the Pro motherboards are really designed for that user who needs all of those security and manageability features as a part of the platform. Many of the motherboard manufacturers implement features like IPMI or BMC based manageability on the board, higher performance NICs as a part of that platform as well, more advanced layered security features as a part of that motherboard design, which inevitably all drive up the cost of the platform, but also add that level of security, manageability, et cetera, that a true enterprise customer would need as a part of their workstation system. On the high-end desktop side, I think you largely will not see manageability as a part of those motherboard designs. And then it just kind of starts to separate maybe fewer of the security features, reliability features, certainly not the manageability features, designed around a smaller form factor board and targeting a more affordable, more reasonable price point for somebody who doesn't necessarily have a need for all of those enterprise level features in their system.
Got it. Thank you. We have another question that's not really relevant, but it might be fun to talk about. So Mike on YouTube, you're asking about one socket and two socket compatibility and explain the differences. Now, both of these platforms, strictly single socket. We're not going to see a dual socket Threadripper, right?
That is correct. If a user is looking for dual socket compatibility or dual socket capability, that's really something that we only offer in our EPYC data center server processor line.
Got it. And this is actually right in line with the next thing I was going to ask, but I'll pop Nevin's question up here. Can you? I'm just going to add another layer to it. Can you talk a little bit about the complexities? Like, which operating system should users be using on these platforms? Should we stick with Windows 11 Pro? Do you get a better experience on Linux to sort of maximize performance? Any color you can provide there?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we have seen, this is like you're asking me to name my favorite child as a part of this. So I'll tread carefully here. We have seen fantastic performance on Linux in this system. And I think it's very true that as you talk about some of the more scientific engineering and content creation development spaces that we're talking about, Linux is very, very prevalent in many of those systems. And the data we've collected and the feedback that we've heard from early partners that have gotten their hands on this 7000 series Threadripper platform is that the Linux performance has been absolutely stellar with 7000 series. I'll say that even in Windows, you really don't see a material roll off in terms of performance on that platform as well. There's probably a couple of nuances here and there about higher core count in Windows and some of the trade-offs with a 96 core processor in a Windows 11 Pro environment. But by and large, the performance on both operating systems is great, and you're really not leaving anything on the table by picking one or the other.
And hey, I think Apple should just drop it right into the next Mac Pro, right?
No comment. No comment.
Sorry, I had to throw that out there. Couldn't resist. Let's see. Anything else? Are we pretty much wrapping up on the questions in the chat?
I think so. Mike is just explaining why he wants a 2P workstation, and totally get it. I don't think we kind of missed through the conversations. We sort of answered everything else that I'm seeing here.
Yeah.
So I think we are good in terms of live questions.
Yeah. I'll drop another link in the chat. This is some of the liquid cooled benchmark record shattering action that Threadripper's been on. That was announced today. It was funny. One of our guys at Hot Hardware who lit up the initial air cooled results for the benchmark record, world record breaking. He was annoyed because literally a few hours later his article was out of date because the liquid records came up.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, what are you gonna do? It's a good problem to have.
It's a good problem to have. You're right.
Yeah. I had a question personally about you, Dave. Are you a Threadripper kind of guy for your home workstation, or are you more of a 7950X3D? Or can we put you on the spot again about your favorite child?
My favorite kid, boy. The challenge for me is there was a point in my life when I was a gamer. There was a point in my life where I used more high core count processors like Threadripper. But the reality is the job I have today keeps me awfully busy. And I don't have as much time to do those things as I used to. So as much as I enjoy both Ryzen and Threadripper, it's finding the time to spend with the systems that really is the challenge today. So I guess the short answer is no. At home today, I have a Ryzen desktop system. I have a 7800X3D with a 7900 XTX Radeon graphics card. And it's a really awesome system. But haven't rebuilt my Threadripper system. Maybe over the holidays, I'll find some free time to do that.
Oh yeah, why not? That's always a fun project.
That's right.
Do you have kids, Dave? You get
I do. It's actually this is kind of a funny story, but it is now a family affair here at AMD. So my son is an engineer at AMD, works in product engineering, where he writes test programs for new chips that are in development. And my daughter is in the AMD marketing organization for our consumer products. So I brought both the kids along, and we're an all AMD family.
I love that. That's great.
That's awesome. That's very cool.
My son's an engineer too, but he doesn't work in my field. He's building jet engines for GE Aerospace.
Oh, wow.
So
that would be fun also.
He's way smarter than his old man. So thank God for that. Marco, I'm sorry, you were going to jump in with
no,
something.
I was just gonna make like two quick observations, right? Regarding many core processors, this is I say this every time we talk about many core processors. Lots of people think it's only you think in terms of specific applications that can use all the cores, but on an OS like Windows, every sort of thread and app you have running in the background can be across different cores. So you may think, oh, this one particular app I use the most, it's not going to benefit, but the total platform just simply has more resources. We've been talking about this since way back when we were using dual P3s in an 8-bit motherboard. It is something to consider. Like if you ever feel your high-end mainstream desktop needed a little more oomph, perhaps look into the platforms. And practically Chrome uses a ton of memory, and you can get more memory into these platforms. So it makes sense really for everybody everybody should have one if you really think about it.
I couldn't agree more.
Exactly.
No, I will point out that as we develop these multi-core processors, it's very true what I said earlier, that all of these workloads are very specialized, and when you look even in a single domain, architecture and construction, or design and manufacturing, or even CAD/CAM and modeling and animation. There's portions of each of those workloads that demand lots of cores. There's portions of those workloads that need fewer cores. And I think that one of the beauties about 7000 series Threadripper is it fits both of those needs. Now, what I will point out is going all the way up to that 96 core processor, there are only certain users, certain workloads that are really going to take advantage of all of that core count and bandwidth and throughput. But there are applications out there where there is no tool like it for that particular user.
Absolutely.
Excellent. And it can run Crisis, that much we know.
I think it can.
Yeah. Well, with that, David, I think we should let you off the hook, because we've eaten up a full hour of your time, graciously joining us here. Appreciate it very much. It's good to catch up with you again. You're getting to be a regular fixture on the show.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me back. It was fun talking with you again.
Yeah, absolutely. And any parting words of wisdom, Dave, for the viewers out there?
No, I think maybe the one thing to touch on that is really an important aspect of this platform is just where it takes us in terms of AI and AI development. And I'll even point out that the day that we launched, our graphics partner NVIDIA did a really nice blog about 7000 series Ryzen Threadripper for AI development and training. And I think for those software developers and data scientists looking for that next platform that gives them unprecedented capability, I think Threadripper is an excellent choice for them.
I would have to agree. Well, all right. Well, David, thank you so much for joining us. David McAfee from AMD. It was great to see you again. Thank you so much for your time and the insight. We're looking forward to the launch of the high-end desktop product next week. Marco's looking forward to burning some more midnight oil. In the meantime, getting his numbers pulled together. And that'll be fun next week. So come back to hothardware.com, where you can find us on the web, twitter.com/hothardware, where you can see our updates live on or I should say x.com, whatever it is now. And Facebook and YouTube, we're Hot Hardware, and that's where you can find us. Hit the like button and subscribe so you get notified when we go live with these segments with fun folks like Dave from AMD here. And in the meantime, we will see you on the next one. Thanks again, Dave, for your time. And thanks everybody.
You very much, guys. Great to see you.
Stopping by. Yeah, you as well. Take care. Thanks for stopping by, Al.
All right. Bye-bye.